For most of human history, our to-do list was pretty simple, right? Don't starve, don't die from some awful plague, and try not to get killed in a war. Well, we got so good at checking those boxes that we've nearly wiped them off the agenda. So what's next? According to Yuval Noah Harari's incredible book, Homo Deus, our next project is, well, it's to upgrade ourselves, to go from Homo sapiens to Homo Deus, basically, to become gods.
Harari paints this amazing picture. He asks us to imagine humanity as a whole, waking up from the long, terrible nightmare that was the 20th century, all the barbed wire and the mushroom clouds. And for the first time ever, our daily agenda isn't just about pure survival. We've kind of checked off all the old items. The huge question now is, what do we even write on that new to-do list?
Okay, so before we can even talk about that new agenda, we've got to look back and really appreciate just how completely we crushed the old one. I mean, for nearly all of history, human life was just one long, brutal fight against three big enemies.
And we're talking about famine, plague, and war. And look, these weren't just inconveniences. They were the very fabric of life. They were the gods people prayed to, the demons they feared. They shaped literally everything: religion, politics, culture. And for millennia, we just thought, hey, that's just the way it is. It's like the weather, totally out of our hand.
You know, it's almost impossible for us today to really get our heads around what famine was like. This quote here from 17th century France, it's just brutal. And the key thing to remember is that this wasn't some once-in-a-century disaster. This was the background noise of life, a constant threat. When people prayed for their daily bread, they were literally praying not to end up like this. And then, in what has to be one of the craziest plot twists in all of human history, today, for the first time ever, more people die from eating too much than from eating too little. Think about that. We've gotten so good at making food that our biggest problem is now having too much of it. We didn't just fight the enemy of famine, we completely knocked it out. And our success? Well, it's led to total domination of the planet. I mean, just look at this. It's staggering. All the wild animals you can think of, lions, elephants, wolves, the things that used to rule the earth, they're now just a tiny, tiny fraction of the big animals out there. Humans, and the animals we raise for food like cows and chickens, make up more than 90% of it. We haven't just conquered the planet, we've completely remade it for ourselves. Okay, so the old gods of famine and plague are gone. The old problems are mostly solved. So where do we get our meaning from now? What's our new source of authority? Well, Harari says we stopped looking up at the heavens and started looking inward. We basically invented a brand new religion for ourselves: humanism. And what is humanism? At its core, it's this really radical idea that says, hey, there's no big cosmic plan out there written by a god. Nope. Instead, it's our own human experiences, our feelings, what we want, the choices we make. That's what gives the universe meaning. In a nutshell, humanity kicked God off the throne and took the seat for itself. And this right here shows you that shift perfectly. On one side, you've got the old way. A king's power comes directly from God. It's a top-down thing. On the other side, you've got the new way. Power comes from the feelings and choices of millions of individual voters. We stopped looking up to the sky for guidance and started looking into the ballot box instead. I mean, just think about how baked into our culture this is. How many times a day do you hear stuff like, listen to yourself, follow your heart, you do you? These are basically the 10 commandments of humanism. It doesn't matter if you're picking a job, a life partner, or who to vote for. The ultimate authority is that inner feeling. The customer is always right, the voter knows best, and if it feels right, then it must be right. But, and this is a huge but, there's a problem. The whole house of cards for humanism is built on one single idea, that our inner voice, our self, is this pure, authentic, all-knowing thing. So what happens when science comes along and says, actually, that feeling of free will, that's just a bunch of biochemical algorithms firing in your brain. And that self you're listening to, it's not even one thing. Yeah, the life sciences are really starting to poke holes in the whole humanist story. The new perspective is that organisms, and yes, that includes us, aren't these mystical souls. We're actually just incredibly complex biological algorithms. We've been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution to do one thing really well: make calculations that help us survive and reproduce. And one of the most mind-blowing discoveries is that we don't just have one self, we've got at least two. First, there's the experiencing self. This is the part of you that's living in the moment-to-moment, feeling all the pain, the pleasure, the boredom, but it has a terrible memory. Then you've got the narrating self. This is the one you think of as you.
It's like your brain's storyteller. It takes all those messy moments and weaves them into a neat story. The only problem? It's a terrible historian and an even worse storyteller.
Okay, this experiment is the perfect way to see how this works. It's kind of wild. So you have people put their hand in painfully cold water for 60 seconds. Then they do a second trial. This time, it's the same 60 seconds in cold water, plus another 30 seconds where the water is just a tiny bit warmer, but still painful. Now, objectively, the second trial has more total pain, right? But here's the crazy part. Because it ended on a slightly better note, the narrating self, the storyteller, remembers it as being less bad. And when they ask people which one they'd rather repeat, a whopping 80% chose the longer, more painful one. Our free will, the thing we trust so much, can be so easily tricked. So, let's recap. Our old problems are basically solved, and our current religion, humanism, is getting torn apart by science. So, what's next? This is where Harari lays out humanity's new, frankly insane agenda for the 21st century. You see, the line between healing something that's broken and upgrading something that works is getting blurrier by the day. Take IVF, for example. It starts out as a medical solution to help with infertility. But the exact same technology that lets you screen an embryo for a terrible genetic disease could also let you screen for things like intelligence or athleticism. It's a very, very short walk from fixing problems to engineering perfection. And this leads to the 3 huge new projects at the top of humanity's to-do list. First, immortality. We're starting to treat death not as some spiritual fate, but as a technical glitch that we can fix. Second, happiness. Not just finding it, but engineering permanent bliss by tweaking our own brain chemistry. And third, the biggest one of all, divinity. Upgrading ourselves from Homo sapiens into Homo Deus, beings with godlike powers. And please, don't think this is just some crazy science fiction stuff. This quote from Peter Thiel, one of the most powerful guys in Silicon Valley, says it all. He sees death as something to be fought, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. For this new tech elite, Harari argues things like social equality are kind of a 20th century problem. Immortality is the new prize. All of this, it leads us to the final and maybe the most shocking idea in the whole book. As humanism starts to fall apart, a new techno-religion is bubbling up to take its place, and it's being born in the server farms of Silicon Valley. Let me introduce you to Dataism. In this new religion, the entire universe is just one thing, a massive flow of data. And what are organisms? We're just algorithms processing that data. A beehive is an algorithm. The stock market is an algorithm. Your brain is an algorithm. And our grand purpose in the cosmos? It's not about human feelings anymore. It's about processing data, contributing to the great data flow, and eventually becoming one with it. Now, here's why this is such a game changer. Our whole way of life, liberalism, democracy, capitalism, it's all based on the humanist idea that I know myself best. My feelings are the ultimate authority. But Dataism says there's a tipping point coming, a day when an external algorithm, Google, Amazon, you name it, has so much of your data that it actually understands you better than your own faulty storytelling, narrating self does. And on that day, why would you trust your gut? It becomes totally logical to just trust the algorithm. And look, we're not going to just wake up one day and hand over the keys to the kingdom. It's happening in stages, and we're already on the path. First, we treat algorithms as oracles. Think about how you trust Waze to tell you the best way to get somewhere, even if your gut says otherwise. The next step is the agent, where you let the algorithm act for you, maybe buy your groceries or manage your calendar. And the final, logical step? The sovereign. An algorithm we trust so much, we let it make the biggest decisions of our lives. Who to marry, what career to pursue, simply because the data shows it will make a better choice than we will. And that brings us to the final chilling question Harari leaves us with. For our entire history, we've believed we were the most important thing in the universe. But if dataism is the future, if the universe really is just a flow of data, and we humans are no longer the most efficient algorithm for processing it, then what's our purpose? What's our role in this new world that we ourselves are building?